to see you, Tony. How are you, my friend?
I'm well, Seth. How are you?
I am great. Now, how much drooling from the mouth did you do watching Caleb Williams the other day?
When he's scrambling out of the pocket and throwing off his right foot and dropping 40-yard dimes, it's a good time to be hopeful for Bears.
Hard not to get excited about that, right?
The only thing we got to worry about is those pesky Lions and the Packers. But I think this is our year.
Yep, there you go. Well, hopefully it pans out for him. It's about darn time. But anyways, Tony, let's dive into. I know it feels like, and we sit here in mid to late August. I feel like we should have been talking about this already. But you were telling me you just got back the data from the Illinois Youth Survey. Let's take a step back, and for folks maybe new to this concept, what is the Illinois Youth Survey? And then we'll dive into the findings from there.
Yeah. So the Illinois Youth Survey is a self-report by all 8th, 10th, and 12th graders that agree to take the test. It's put on by the Illinois School of Social Work's Center for Prevention, Research, and Development. It's a funded program through the Department of Human Services. And it's a pretty vast survey. It obviously asks certain demographic information of age, gender, sexuality. If districts choose to ask that question, I know a lot of them in the counties that we serve in did not, which I think, in my opinion, is kind of a good thing, because that's a very complex question to ask a 8th grader. Anyway, it's a self-report on a myriad of factors. Mostly it's looking at substance use, practices, beliefs. Are your parents talking to you about stuff like that? There's a little bit of mental health. And then there's some interesting information in there just about like how often do you, how much screen time do you look at? How often do your parents talk to you about the dangers of drugs and alcohol? How often are you guys eating together? Lots of good family dynamic information if your listeners would want to take a deep dive into what their county, how they're behaving.
So let's dive into Tony. What did you find this year? And I want you to at the same time kind of compare, what you were anticipating finding this year. So how about those two things?
Yeah, well, I would say, just looking at each county overall, I'm very, very impressed with the fact that it appears that our substance use is down with our youth. Which I was really, really surprised on. So the big takeaways, I think, for both Piatt and DeWitt County is at least your kids are reporting that they are using and experimenting with drugs and alcohol to a lesser degree than they were in 2022. There also appears there's one question at the back, obviously, as a mental health professionals that I like to pay attention to. It's a question that says, seriously considered attempting suicide. And that number appears to be down as well. I'm just going to very quickly try to pull from DeWitt County. So in 2022, our numbers for that question, we don't ask it of 8th graders, we ask it of 10th and 12th graders. Have you seriously considered attempting suicide? So in 2022, 27% of the 10th graders answered that in the affirmative, compared to 20% this year. 31% of the 12th graders answered in the affirmative in 2022. That's way down to 14%. So that I'm happy to see. Conversely, though, I am a little bit concerned. There is a question that asks 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, in the past 12 months, have you felt so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you've stopped doing some usual activities? In the therapeutic world, we would call that a socioeconomic change. That's one of the criteria to giving a lot of mental health disorders a symptom, because behavioral health issues should exhibit themselves across all planes: home, school, work, not just in one, because then we can't say it's a mental health issue. That's potentially a environmental cause. So of those kids, felt so sad or hopeless, they discontinued activities. It looks like we have some improvement with our eighth graders. Last time it was 49%. This time it's 40%. But we're seeing 4% increase in our 10th graders and 12th graders compared to last year. So taking a very vague swipe at mental health, and this is, I apologize to all my other colleagues of trying to overgeneralize it. It appears that the sharp, acute mental health disturbances are going down, but our chronic long-term effects of depression and anxiety are going up. So I don't know whether or not to take that as a positive or a negative, that we've got youth that are saying that they're thinking less about suicide, which is great. And quite frankly, I think that has a lot to do with my friends over at Heritage Behavioral Health Center and Katie Arnold over at Clinton High School, of just really diving down into the topic of self-harm and educating the youth about that. Prevention works, and I think their efforts are being seen on this result right here.
You talked about the piece of, suicide idolization going down, but long term, kind of depression, anxiety going up. What does that tell you, Tony? Is there something in there that maybe the layman like myself wouldn't know, wouldn't connect, but that says something to you about what's going on?
Well, I think maybe a couple things. One is obviously, I think, like I said, Heritage and the behavioral health workers in the schools are identifying some of these crisis care calls faster and hopefully teaching them coping skills or getting them directed to the appropriate mental health professionals. Possibly the more scarier answer is that these kids have just learned how to deal with behavioral health issues and trauma, and just realize that that is sadly a part of our lives that won't go away entirely. And that's more of a doom and gloom of just like,
this just is what it is. I'm gonna have to deal with it. It's like having a skin thing or some sort of illness or disease or something like that. It's just like, this is what it is. I'm gonna have to deal with it all my life, type of thing.
Yeah, and then again, I think the other thing is, and again, this is me showing my age and being, I'm not so old that I'm going to sit on my porch and tell kids to get off my yard. I haven't gotten there yet, although I don't want them on my yard. I would say we really need to be looking at social media. And I know there are a lot of school districts, I've even done some research on it. There are a lot of school districts that are saying we need to be putting our phones away. We need to be limiting the amount of social media. Seth, my concern is that as our youth are continuing to exhibit strong emotional responses to trauma or difficult situations, they're learning a response which says, draw away, go to your room, escape into whatever that is. And I think social media, Instagram, TikTok, all of that allows us not to live in reality. And we amplify the desirable, unattainable, and we negate the fact that everyone has struggles. So I think it's a brilliant move, quite frankly, that there are school districts saying we're not allowing access during instructional time.
Yeah.
Because social media, I'm not going to say phones, because the research is kind of wonky there. I would say the amount of time our youth are spending on social media can be directly correlated to increased anxiety and depression.
You're saying what we're all thinking, Tony. I applaud you for saying it. Not too many guys in your position would just flat out put it out there like that. So, and this is, I go back to a lot of things. Again, Tony Kirkman is the executive director of the Piatt County Mental Health Center, our guest on the Zoom call today. As families, and this is just kind of a byproduct of, we have to work. Mom and dad have to work 40 hours to afford life in America today. So as families, we put so much emphasis on, places like schools or daycare or, these after school, before school programs that we send our kids to, as a form of childcare. We ask so much of those places anymore. I think the emphasis has to come back to parents, and we have to, as parents and families, we have to do a better job of not necessarily protecting our kids, but just helping them navigate these things. And parents can withdraw into the phones and into the substances and the abuses, the abuse that can happen there. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tony? That's just kind of my thought off the top.
Well, I mean, we used to be able to develop our young people in a community, We had extended family. It wasn't uncommon for me to go to, my numerous uncles and aunts' homes or grandma and grandpa, and they played an active role, as well as my neighbors. My neighbors, and I don't know, Seth, you were probably a good kid. My parents earned their cred with me. But my neighbors had access to speaking into my development, because I lived in a smaller town. If I misbehaved, my dad knew about it before I even got home. And that's how it was. Is like, we all said we have it was a community approach. We are trying to do our best to love and educate and inspire our young people, because we want them to develop to be successful contributing members of society. So
yeah, it takes a village to raise a child type of a thing.
Absolutely. Now it's forget the community. I'm not even allowing the teachers to educate my kids in the way that they have spent their entire careers being taught how to do so, because I know my kid better, and my fifth grader surely wouldn't lie to me. The educator with a degree and certification's got to be the liar, because they just don't like my kid. And that's just ridiculous. There needs to be more of a collaborative spirit with education, both educationally and social emotional education. So, and then they always say there's more caught than taught. So if we are not exhibiting good self-care and emotional well-being, our kids are going to see that. So when I'm stressed out, when I'm angry, how do I behave? And then my kid says, that is the socially acceptable way. So am I throwing back a few Budweisers? Am I yelling at the dog? Am I putting my hand through drywall? Well, that's how you handle anger then. So why am I getting mad when the kid starts fighting on the bus? Or, it really is just more of a, as you said, and I agree 100%, a community approach. And we all need each other, and we all have stuff in our background. So we're not going to have the Instagram life. It's not reality.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Tony, I want to piggyback off of a couple of things you hit on there. But first, where do folks go to learn about all things Piatt County Mental Health Center? We're going to take a break, and we'll dive into a few of those things when we come back. But tell me more about Piatt County Mental Health Center.
Yeah, check us out online, piattmhc.org. Give me a call, 217-762-5371, or check us out on Facebook.
Tony Kirkman, Executive Director of the Piatt County Mental Health Center, my guest on the phone this morning. We'll take a break here. More to come with Tony on The Morning Show.
WHOW. Your Farm Bureau membership.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn steady, beans slightly higher, wheat trading lower. September corn up 1/4, 375 1/4. December corn unchanged, 398. March corn 416 3/4, down a penny. September beans 961 1/2, up 4 1/4. November beans up 3 3/4, 979 3/4. January beans 998, up 3 3/4. September wheat down 8 1/2, 524 1/2. December wheat down 8, 548 1/2. September bean meal 314.90. That's up 260. September bean oil 40.88, up 17 cents. Livestock market at this hour. August feeders 239.35, up $1.15. August live cattle down 77 cents, 180.25. October lean hogs 77.60, up $1.20. Energy market, October crude oil up 40 cents, 73.57. I'm Jim Taylor.
Untangling your headphones, finding the right remote, saying goodbye to your favorite shirt that hasn't fit in 10 years. Why are simple things sometimes so complicated? Thankfully, with Auto Owners, insurance doesn't have to be one of them. Auto Owners works with independent agents who live in your community and answer when you call, so you can worry about more important things, like finding a new favorite shirt. That's simple human sense.
Come see me, Jay Peterson, your Auto Owners Insurance agent at 117 West Main in Clinton, or call 935-6605.
Warner Hospital and Health Services expanded emergency room means big hospital tech, small hospital caring. When you need ER care, make it Warner Hospital and Health Services in Clinton. Find out how their expanded ER can help you by clicking their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Ramey Miller from Run Deep Coaching. Take your power back. I do holistic personal and business coaching. My service is virtual, so we can visit no matter where you are. Find out more by clicking my icon at DeWittDailyNews.com. That's DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks again for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on the phone today, Tony Kirkman, Executive Director of the Piatt County Mental Health Center. And, you know, Tony, I love our conversations because we will start with a simple thing like the Illinois Youth Survey and just the general data sets that you dialed in on, and we will get off onto a topic about parenting and setting good examples for our kids and all of those things. It's always good stuff. We were talking about, you know, kind of the concept of learned behavior and support systems for raising kids and that sort of thing when we were going to break there. I know you've got a few kind of stats that kind of add to this conversation. Tell me about this. What do you have for us?
Yeah, so looking very quickly through. So I think when we talk about parenting, especially as it relates to substance use, alcohol use, just a few things to look at. So this is a question that, again, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders are asked about. So in the past year, has your parents or guardians talked to you about not using alcohol, tobacco, marijuana? The part that's concerning to me is that over 40% have not had that conversation with their kids. So 41%, we'll just start at 10th graders. 47% have not had a conversation with their parents about alcohol, 44% about tobacco, 45% about marijuana. And then the one that I keep going back to that blows my mind, and it's not a judgment thing, it's more of a frustration and a sadness for our community. So there's a question about, out of the kids that are actively using alcohol or marijuana, so we'll just stay with alcohol, they say, where'd you get it from? Where are you getting, where's your supply? Out of the 8th graders, 44%. Out of the 10th graders, 59%. And out of the 12th graders, 49% are saying, I am getting it from my parents with their permission.
Mm-hmm.
That's not stealing it from their liquor cabinet, going out to the garage and taking one of the beers. It is our parents are knowingly giving us a poison. Our brains haven't fully developed, and they are willingly giving us a poison. The same question is asked of marijuana. Thankfully, out of those that are surveyed, 0% said they got it as 8th graders, marijuana from their parents. But in both 10th and 12th graders, 14% of them are saying, my parents are knowingly giving it to me. We're talking about an illicit, for them, an illegal mind-altering substance. And again, I'm not going to get on the bandwagon of rec and medical because I think it has its place, but it does not have its place with a pre-emerging mind that's prefrontal cortex is not developed, and you're stunting that development through production.
That, and it's not a judgment thing. That's heartbreaking, is what that is.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That I mean that because and I guess you know, again, Tony, kind of getting down these rabbit trails with you. Why is it so detrimental to the human mind and the human development?
Well, I mean, I think about it's the same thing as social media. So social media, we look at hits our brain with a chemical called dopamine. It's that feel-good, pleasure-seeking thing that causes us, from a behavioralistic standpoint, to repeat that behavior. So if you think about the hamster hitting the food pellet lever and it gets food, it keeps hitting that because it knows it's been reinforced. Social media, it reinforces that dopamine. We keep making that hit. It's causing an unrealistic behavioral feedback loop. So when we don't get it, when we don't get the like or we don't get the share, it causes issues with our development. For the alcohol, for the marijuana, we do know scientifically that marijuana does impact motivation. My concern is your prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until you're 21, 25, somewhere around that. That is impulse control, emotional regulation, moral reasoning, being able to assess risks. That's what we call this executive functioning. And so if that is stunted in some way, you're going to have a prepubescent functioning mind going into adulthood, where delayed gratification is a sign of intelligence. Obviously, risk assessment is going to be a big deal. I want to make sure that we're giving our future leaders of this generation every single resource for them to be successful, because if they win, we win.
Yeah. Well said, Tony. Well said. Well, what's kind of next for you as you sift through and sort through the Illinois Youth Survey data? Where do you go next? What do you do next?
Well, I think some of the survey is saying that vaping is continuing to be a concern.
Yeah.
We see that the age of occurrence is actually getting younger. So everything that we were trying to focus in at maybe the high school level, I think our staff is going to have to be looking, both our prevention, our treatment, and our behavioral health are going to have to start shifting some of those more moderate approaches of intervention down to the younger middle school line. I've talked to a lot of administrators, and that's one of the things they're concerned about, is serious persistent behavior happening at a much younger age than it ever has before.
How do folks learn more about the Piatt County Mental Health Center, Tony, to wrap us up today?
Check me out online, piattmhc.org. Give me a call, 217-762-5371, or check us out on Facebook.
That is Tony Kirkman, Executive Director of the Piatt County Mental Health Center, our guest on the Zoom call today. Network News on the way.